our great responsibility is to be guardians of our liberty. Will tyrants bow to the people's dream, and justice flow like a mighty stream? Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fight.
Hello and welcome. My name is Bill Beckler. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees here at Brooklyn Ethical. We are delighted to be hosting the American Ethical Union's All Societies platform and introducing Laura Flanders to our movement across the country. Thank you to all the folks who are here with me at Brooklyn Ethical today, and also across the country we have 22 societies and circles, and folks will be zooming in from all over for today's platform called Thinking Outside the Box. What if these aren't the worst of times? To start things off, I've invited a few societies to give us their version of thinking outside the box. And we're going to start with Patricia from Susquehanna.
Good morning, everyone, and hello from the Susquehanna Valley Ethical Society located in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. My name is Patty Arduini, and our society is thrilled to be coming to you from Central PA. We may be in the heart of the Bible Belt, but we are committed to building a unique community to offer folks a humanist and ethical place for all walks of life and for all generations to learn and grow together through shared values, doing good, and nurturing the human spirit. We think outside the box by building strong partnerships in our region. Our members volunteer with others to pack 60 to 70 food boxes monthly, and you'll frequently find us making meals for the Getting Ahead Foundation. We partner to host community picnics where we have fed up to 100 people, and we distribute food and toiletry items at our Mifflinburg Little Free Food Pantry, which was built for us by the local Boy Scouts. We are so glad to be here with all of you this morning, and now I'm going to send you over to my friend Jackie from Asheville, North Carolina.
Good morning. I am Jackie Sims, a founding member in 2001 and president of the board of directors of the Ethical Humanist Society of Asheville, North Carolina, that is. We are pleased to be with you today. As you may know, Asheville experienced the wrath of Hurricane Helene about a year ago. We have hundreds of stories to share of the people affected by the storm and the catastrophic flooding and uprooted trees. For Asheville, it has been among the worst of times, but we are recovering and ready to welcome visitors. In September, Laura Flanders came to Asheville to capture some of our stories of people rebuilding our region. Today, we appreciate the opportunity to see Laura via Zoom. Now, let's go to Kimberly in Mid Rivers, Missouri.
Jackie, hello from the Ethical Society Mid Rivers in deeply red O'Fallon, Missouri. We're happy to be joining you on this weekend dedicated to thankfulness. My name is Kimberly Burzak. I've been a member of Ethical Society Mid Rivers for 17 years. My kids grew up in our SEEK program, and I currently serve as board president for our growing society. As a lay-led volunteer-run organization, our society's goal is to make it a joyful and collaborative place. Every member is welcome to bring Sunday platform ideas and to use our meeting space for artistic, educational, and other events. We have a recurring open jazz jam. We regularly a group that regularly meets for those deconstructing from religious indoctrination. We have Ethicarian dinners, plenty of ethical action events like political petitioning, food drives, clothing drives, all kinds of stuff. If an idea supports our humanist ideals or builds community, it's welcome. It's welcome in our society. We also encourage each other to improve our society. We build and run our society through unbridled collaboration. We're limited only by our imagination and energy, and we gleefully ignore the box. I know that it's early in California, but let's wake them up in Silicon Valley.
Hi, everybody, and good morning. It is 8 a.m. here in California. This is my morning coffee here. My name is John Dukovic, and I'm with the Ethical Culture Society of Silicon Valley. And of all the communities affiliated with the American Ethical Union, we are one of the newest, and we're definitely the farthest flung in the ethical culture solar system. You might think of us as Pluto. Our members and friends enjoy coming together to learn from each other and better understand ethical issues and the social conditions around us. We are very concerned about the affordability crisis in our region, especially as it affects the unhoused population here in the Bay Area. And we partner with a local shelter to deliver meals to those who are most in need. We're also energized in our group by protesting together against the many abuses of the current administration, including the inhumane treatment of our immigrant neighbors. Before we go back to Brooklyn and Laura Flanders, let's send it over to Scott Wright at the Ethical Society of St. Louis.
All right, thank you, John. Hello from all societies and welcome to our All Societies platform. My name is Scott Wright and I'm pleased to be representing the American Ethical Union this year as its president. This is a landmark year for us as we celebrate the 150th anniversary of ethical culture. The very first Ethical Culture Society was founded in New York City in 1876, and just 10 years later, in 1886, the Ethical Society of St. Louis was incorporated in the state of Missouri. From the very beginning, St. Louis has thought outside the box, focusing on public education opportunities for all people and springboarding from those opportunities to build meaningful social community that swelled to 515 members by our first annual pledge drive in 1915. When I look back on the robust legacy and real cultural impact of our movement over the past 150 years, I feel proud of everything that was accomplished and also a bit nostalgic for something I feel that I've never fully experienced myself. So, centering us in the present, I believe what we need to focus on now more than ever is how we can rebuild that strong nationwide movement centered on ethical culture and humanist values, which focus on human dignity, human goodness, and our inalienable power to build meaningful relationships with one another and to the earth we live upon. As a non-theistic organization, we do not concern ourselves with deities, holy scriptures, or supernatural higher powers of any kind. Instead, we strive to live our shared values to the best of our ability, to celebrate the unique unlikeness in each other, and to act as to elicit the best in each other and thereby in ourselves. Before we begin, let's celebrate those unique unlikenesses. I'm going to invite everyone online into this space by way of what's called a chat cascade on Zoom. So I'm going to count down from 3 in just a minute. Then everyone on chat is invited to share 1 or 2 words that describe how you're landing today, how you're feeling, or something that you're grateful for. I'll give you just a couple seconds to think of a couple words, and then I'll count down and then type into the chat when we say go. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. Hopeful, optimistic, family, lots of things to be grateful for. Good health, community, that's what we're all here for. Yep, keep it coming. As the chat cascade continues, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you all here today and our special guest, Laura Flanders.
Welcome to Laura Flanders and Friends, the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the people who are doing it.
This is how change happens in this country, when vast numbers of people come together and defend a vision of the future.
The idea that policing and jails equal safety is simply not true.
If we do nothing, we'll be looking at apartheid in America with no economic and political power, no net wealth.
Sooner or later, we have to recognize the planet is the only home.
I hope we sit with these uncomfortable and courageous conversations.
Learning about the past has really no value if you're not going to apply it for a better future.
Till the next time, stay kind, stay curious. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. So, my name is Rebecca Lurie. I'm a very long-time member of the Society here in Brooklyn. So happy to have you and our guest, Laura. Before I get us too grounded, I would like to do a check-in on access and place to make sure everyone can see what they need to see, hear what they need to hear. There's ASL available if you're online. You can pin the ASL screen to see that if you need the ASL language. Closed captions you can activate at the bottom of your screen with the closed captioning feature. And for those who may be visually impaired, I'd like to do something that I've picked up as a tradition I try to use, which is to visually situate you. So I am sitting in a tall chair behind a table with African colored fabric. I'm a white woman with dark curly hair, light blue blouse. I'm sitting next to Laura Flanders, who's charming. If
That's not a visual description.
With great glasses, tortoiseshell glasses, sort of a blonde hair, curly a little bit, and black blouse top. You can add to that if you'd like, Laura. But
check pants, come on.
And checkered pants.
And socks that just happen to match the check pants.
Yeah, red check pants.
I figured I'd be
plaid.
sitting down and you might see the socks. So
okay, red plaid pants, thank you.
Pay careful attention.
So I want to make sure that those who are physically present have access enough, those who are online have access enough. And thank you to our interpreters today as well for the ASL. So again, Rebecca Lurie, longtime member here at the Brooklyn Society. Many of you know me. Some of you know my children who were raised here who are now on either side of 30, so been around. Nice to see you. I'm really happy to be able to do this talk with Laura. I feel like I'm speaking to the expert in interviewing, so I'll just be humble and do my best.
It's a great treat for me to be on this side of it, I will say.
I love it. So, boy, these times that we be living in. So, Laura, let me welcome you, get a little place, why we are here, what you do professionally, and why it's so important for us to be able to get access to good and true news.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, everybody that's here. And even though the talk is thinking outside the box, I do want to just give a little shout out to the box. It takes a lot to maintain an organization for 150 years, let alone establish organizational relationships across the country from coast to coast. But that's what I heard in this morning's presentation. And that involves a lot of people doing a lot of unglorious seeming things on a very regular basis in the rain, in the snow. It involves gorgeous voice and singing contribution energy to keep us all feeling creative and spirit-filled. So I just want to thank everybody that makes this container for this community possible, because that is no small feat. And that links, yes, absolutely. That does segue in a way to the work that I've committed my life to, starting really in the 1980s. I have believed that we needed media that was there in good times and bad times, that was there looking back, looking forward, looking deep, unburying buried treasure, as you put it, Rebecca, the stories of our ancestors, the stories of the places that we're in that don't get told. And so for really all that time, I've worked as an independent journalist, got my start at WBAI, Pacifica Radio, right here in New York. Thank heavens for that particular box. Boy, it's taken some doing to keep that one going. But yay to everybody that has done that. It's been the birthplace for so many of our lives, really, in media. I worked at FAIR for a long time, the Media Watch group that produced a radio show that I helped to start called Counterspin, that helped people give a sense of how the mainstream commercial media was telling the news and how we could improve our media literacy skills as we absorbed what we were being told and reflected on whether it actually had any bearing on what we were experiencing. And then for the last 6 seasons, I have maintained a weekly broadcast on public television, which again is a job that is not a single person's job. And a big shout out to everybody at my organization, which is called Curious Communications. We have a board, we have a small staff, we have a small budget, and we produce a weekly show for television and radio. We say it's the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the people who are doing it. We lift up stories of positive change making, transformative change in arts, politics, economics. And while we were in 2019 sort of trepidatious about launching it on public television, we were told you had to pay a certain amount of money to even present it to the network. And I'll slow down a bit for our interpreters. You had to have 25 stations say yes. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know if they're going to say yes to our show. We talk about patriarchy and white supremacy. We say the word capitalism on a pretty regular basis, being against it. And sure enough, in that very first year, we had about 100 stations pick up our show around the country. And now I'm very proud to tell you for the last 5 seasons, so first season was the start, and we've been on for 6, we're now on about 300 stations all across the country. In many of the places that we've just seen referred to, people are hungry for programming that gives them some sense of an alternative, and to be able to turn it on their TVs for free without having to pay for expensive broadband or cable on their public television station. You can tell I'm shouting out to public media, has been very important. So I want to thank all the people on my staff who helped to make that possible, and our board. And if you haven't checked out Laura Flanders and Friends, please do. I always say media is a plural noun. It involves you all. So thank you. We're listener and viewer supported.
I love that. I recently stopped subscribing to the New York Times, although I realized I might be able to get access through my CUNY employment, but stopped subscribing to the New York Times because it would have been $100 a year or more, and very consciously started paying for the things I watch and see and digest on mostly on my phone or my computer. And when I do that, I imagine walking down the block past a newsstand and picking up the Village Voice. That might have been what I paid for when I was 20, right? So now it's free, I know, or was free. Well, anyway, the point is that we have to purchase and support the media that tells us the truth and really covers what we need to hear from a perspective that we can appreciate. So speaking of perspectives we appreciate, I actually want to step into our legacies for a moment. We all stand on shoulders of many people. We each have people we reference in our being, in our heart and soul, that places us where we are today. We often start our service or platform with a moment of remembering our ancestors, and I often channel Ellen Lurie, my mother, who taught me to be anti-racist before I had words for it, and understood that you had to use that lens wherever you go. The legacies that we stand upon. When I was getting ready today to come, I was like, what button do I want to wear? There were so many, and I didn't put any pin on per se, but I thought of putting on Sojourner Truth as someone that I have a button of her. And that, when we channel those who inspire us, it makes us more deeply who we are, grounded in a history. So let me ask you, who inspires you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I actually have a fantastic family set of choices. And I'll just name 2, but I'll actually start with a municipal engineer who really I am here because somebody made a building accessible. That's a long story attached to that. But I was recently at a blue plaque unveiling, you know, those history plaques on certain buildings. My father was a famous performer in the UK, and the people in the house where he had started his career put a blue plaque on the outside of their building. Now, my father had been a performer in college. He came up through the university system in the UK, but in the first or second year of college, before he was able to graduate, he was called away to World War II, joined the Navy, and came home with polio, and was in a wheelchair ever after, and continued to have a very successful performing career, about which more some other time. But I went to the house that he had lived in, where he started his career as a songwriter and performer, and I realized, oh, there was a flat, as they called it, an apartment in the back of this big house that he was able to reach in his chair because somebody had taken a bite out of the sidewalk to enable him to get from the car that veterans were given in the UK when they cared about their veterans, from the car to the building. And this is where he was first able to entertain my mother. And I realized, I was probably conceived right there in that place, and if that piece of sidewalk had not been removed, who knows what would have happened. Wow. So that's part of the legacy, is him and the municipal engineer who took the bite out of the sidewalk. And then the other, somebody from around the country today used the word unbridled, and that reminded me of another really precious ancestor, a journalist. The other side of my family are journalists, radical journalists. And the one that I was the closest to was my uncle, Alexander Coburn, who was a radical journalist his whole life, and was a radical thinker and believer in human possibility and radical change. And when Alexander came to stay, as he did with me and my partner many times, Elizabeth and I would wake up to Alexander, who never slept in the guest bed, always slept on the couch. And he would wake up every morning and he would say, "Are you ready to greet the day with unbridled optimism?" So come on.
Yeah.
You can see where I came from.
Totally. And we didn't know that when the script was written by whoever referenced the unbridledness, but here we are. You know, I remember learning that your father lived using a wheelchair, and that connected some other dots for me. But another shout out to those who recently departed, I want to name Alice Wong. And for people who don't know her name, know it now. Alice Wong lived a life with a disability that made it hard for her to get around in the way that many of us do, and just made a decision to write about it, tell stories, have people tell stories. We have to uncover ableism with the disability pride that is around. And so discovered you've known her as well. I think you did a show with her.
We actually never had an opportunity to have her on the show, but we are planning to kick off 2026 with an Alice Wong appreciation show.
Great. So, you know, that all of these connections, when we expand our circle to include those who may have been excluded because of ableism, how much richer are we, including perhaps conceived?
There you go.
I love that.
Ableism, anti-ableism made me possible.
So, in preparing for this, I had to check with, I didn't have to, I asked Laura, what's her faith? My faith, for years, I've said I'm a humanist, and then I have to say my faith is in one another, in people. And sometimes I see how flawed we are, myself included. And my deeper faith is in nature and all things that grow and go through the cycle of life, and watching the leaves right now decompose, that too. I mean, just the whole cycle of life that this planet gives us, thanks to nature, is where I find such solace and hope in the face of so much. So I wanted to ask you about your faith. What keeps you going, getting up unbridled?
Unbridled? Well, I remember asking Alexander that very question, because in my family there's a lot of red diaper babies, and my grandparents, for example, on my mother's side, were strong communists in the time when she was being raised, and raised her with absolutely no church at all and being against it. She then, in later life, took herself into a church. I don't know whether she was rebelling against her mother, probably part of it, but she was also seeking community, and she found it. So I have no hard feelings to anybody that finds where people find community is where they find it. She found it there. I did ask Alexander once whether he was, what was his faith, and he said, and I think I feel the same way, that he believes there is a spirit in all of us and in everything. And in that way, we're connected. And by that, he meant the trees, the animals that he loved, and the plants that surround us. And so I wish there was a word for more than humanist, for like everythingist.
I heard something recently. It's not coming to me now, more than humanist, but
Humans have a lot to learn.
we do, and we can learn so much when we close our mouth and open our eyes, ears, and pay attention to what's in front of us. I love that.
Speciesist?
Speciesist.
That sounds like you're for some and against others, though.
But earthist, naturist, naturalist. All that said, there was another thing I wanted to say here. I think, the importance of stories.
Well, that was thinking the one, there isn't an ist at the end, but I do think that word Ubuntu that you hear from, I think it's the Swahili tradition.
Ubuntu.
Maybe. The I am because you are, that we all exist in a web of relationship, I think is what we're getting at with this effort to find words, right?
I love that. Thanks. I'm going to jump to out of order because that takes me to the asset-based community development frame I wanted to bring up. So Laura and I have in common now our employer. We both work for the City University of New York. Each of us has adjuncts that makes the city run, this part-time employment situation. But in that space, at the School of Labor and Urban Studies, I get to teach about cooperative economics, and this semester I have a class called Community Development. And in that class, I really am focusing on something we call ABCD, asset-based community development, which really suggests go with what's working, uncover that, take the dust off of that, shine what is really working so we can do more of that. And to me, that really ties to the storytelling you do and saying, let's look at what's working and how that helps us think maybe outside the box and into the next system.
Well, I love the way that you put it as we were having a coffee earlier where you talked about burying buried treasure. Like, what's the buried treasure in your place of life, your people, your physical place, the assets that you have, whether they're the creative assets or the actual monetary or land or crop assets. We often talk about, as you say, community wealth building, that network, that way of creating a system by which you identify the assets in a place, you figure out how they might relate to one another in a mutually beneficial way, you try to keep as much asset as you possibly can from leaking out to other places, and in so doing, build the democratic spirit, capacity, practice in a place. So we've done a lot of different stories on this subject, and you can find them on our website. And it's not complicated, but it is detailed. It's clear that there are people and places that have developed these ways of developing, as it were, have developed in ways that are mutually beneficial, that feed back, that are not just sustainable, but are restorative of a community. And I'm going to just segue from that to something I've been thinking a lot about today, which is it starts with taking an inventory of your place. And I will say that right now, it is critically important that we take inventory of our places. What is actually in them? And I'm saying this for a specific reason. I just made a trip, as many of us do, over the Thanksgiving holiday, 13 hours to Michigan, the Northwest Peninsula of Michigan. Very rural county, Lake County, forest, lake, signs of hunting and fishing, not much else in the winter, a few kind of winter-battered summer cabins. Visited my sister-in-law, we had a wonderful visit, drove home. And as I arrived back home on Friday, I turned my phone back on and started getting ice alerts, the ice watch alerts, action happening in your neighborhood. And yesterday, I got an alert saying there was literally an ice operation on my block. I live in downtown New York and Soho area, and right on the street where I live, over on Center Street, there were ice vehicles massing in a garage. And when I got there, I realized, this is a federal garage, federally owned garage. I have walked past this place a million times. I had no idea that we had a GAO garage right there. And in it were at least half a dozen huge big white ice vans and ice agents trying to get out, but the alert system had brought New Yorkers to blockade, and for hours this blockade continued. The vans were not able to leave. Police came en masse to push and shove the protesters to be able to free the ICE agents from the detention they had put themselves in. But what drove home to me was how I didn't realize that was there. And that federal property could be used for any purpose. And then I started thinking about where I had just come from, where I had had a whiff of a detention center was in the area somewhere. And sure enough, in this tiny rural community where I had driven by a certain stoplight at least half a dozen times in the 3 days I was there, there's literally no one around. If I had just gone 3 more minutes down this dirt road, I would have been in front of the nation's second largest ICE detention and processing facility that has been a boondoggle in that community, promised jobs as a prison, turned into other things, was closed and reopened, just reopened again this June as an ICE detention facility, 1,800 beds. And when I asked my sister-in-law if she knew it was there, she had no idea. She's literally 5-minute drive away. Wow. You would have no idea it's there. So the reason this connects is we have so much to do in terms of identifying the buried treasures and also traps in our neighborhoods and coming up with concrete plans for what else we could do with those places before they get used in the way that we are seeing them being used right now. So there's lots of things that could be in that garage. It could be beautiful low-income housing. We're right on the corner of Chinatown. Low housing is needed. If we had built low-income housing, it wouldn't have been there for ICE to use as a staging ground. We could have created a gorgeous school for the community of the Lake County, Michigan folks, or a fresh market that they have no fresh market within miles. You name it. They could have had a digital fabrication lab, revitalizing their community, creating things that are needed in the community by people in the community in a democratic way. So the work that you're doing, Rebecca, I have to say, is exactly the sort of story we need to be telling about what could be done and what really needs to be done right now, because the default is something we don't want to take over.
Well, Laura, you could teach my class. Asset-based community development suggests that we look at the treasures, what we got, and the ethical societies provide some of that. A lot of us have learned different ways of being in community with each other that practices a nonviolent communication style, that practices democracy in place. We can hone that skill all the time because the magnetic pull for hierarchical thinking is alive and well wherever we are. So really practicing a true democratic process in small groups and larger groups. We're very excited about our new mayor. We're hoping that that will translate into more and more activism. Knowing your neighbors, knowing who might be dependent on some medication that needs to be refrigerated in case then. Understanding how to help when you can, and able-bodied if you're able, and who needs it if they need. So a lot of this is a combination of both being aware and open-minded, vulnerable and willing. So important.
Somebody once said to me, you can develop your community in one of two ways, hunting or gathering. Hunting is trying to bribe some far-off corporation to come in and make jobs, or have a prison that was supposedly going to get jobs for the local community, or gathering, which is gathering up the assets that are already there and figuring out how can you stop them from leaking out in a way that will build the community as it is.
In my mind, and probably yours as well, and others listening and here present, how many examples we may have. And, if we had time, if we turned this into a workshop, we would break into groups and say, tell me an example or listen to one. I want to shout out to Kingsbridge Armory and the Bronx. And there is years and years of fighting to convert what is an empty space, the largest armory in America, into something meaningful. We'll hope it'll happen in our lifetime. It might happen in the next person's lifetimes, but we are going to see asset-based community development in the Bronx, and I'd like to see it here in Gowanus and Park Slope. So many different ways that we do that. So, Laura, let me ask you something about your principal.
Well, I was just going to say I'm very encouraged. I was thinking about Mamdani and our mayor-elect and how important it is that we remain engaged, all the people that voted for him and that believe in him. Got to make him live up to his promises, stay engaged, don't go to sleep. But I have been excited to see that one of the directors at the School of Labor and Urban Studies is on his transition team, Stephanie Luce. In the area of community development, I think.
She's in the area of economic and workforce development. And let me add, one of the students from the certificate program I teach on community workplace democracy and community ownership is a 4-course certificate program. If somebody has control of the chat, they could put it there. I have some flyers for it in the back. But that program intended to take people mid-career to think about how do we do this in place? How do we do community organizing right there? Her name is Katie Fireman, and she's also very active with the Astoria Food Pantry and the Astoria Worker Project and the Consortium for Worker Education, my previous employer. Folks from all these different places are on these transition committees, which is supposed to help inform what are some strategies we can do. One that I've been involved with is around food. So, actually speaking here at Ethical Culture about 5 years ago, just weeks before COVID, was Kathy Goldman and the author of a book called Stirrings about the food struggles in New York historically. And now people are coming together from the food movement to sort of say, how do we make sure if he wants municipally owned grocery stores in every borough, how do we turn that into more access for affordable food? So really seeing how we all step up and step into the space.
And the work of Kathy Goldman is a lesson in and of itself. More or less a one-woman effort to get this city to commit to buying locally for its public schools. Like all of your businesses in your community have some assets in the budgets that you spend where you live. The procurement budgets for the school is enormous in New York City, as you can imagine.
Yeah,
and she did the job of moving that bill that made life different for farmers and farm workers and dairy owners all across the region.
Yeah, it's called good food purchasing policy. And cities all over the country are looking at it now as how do you purchase locally, how do you have good jobs. And her legacy sits with the community food advocates as a group. I know we're going to be turning to questions in a moment. Let me ask you sort of one more thing really about what you hope for the future, where you see some of this energy moving out and expanding.
Well, it's hard to answer that question in these times, in the sense that I think that a lot of what we're going through is a catalytic moment, that something will emerge that we're not too sure exactly what it is. And our job is to remain open to that possibility, to remain open and busy and engaged, creative, looking around, learning. But it's not like I think there's like a silver bullet solution out there if everybody would just get in line. I am encouraged at the King's March of the September, I think it was. Mm-hmm. I went back and I looked at Tom Paine writing before the revolution. And he was writing in the fall of the winter before the revolution. And he talked about that winter this winter could be a winter for the ages, he said. This could be the winter that we throw off the British Empire. He said there's nothing that will enable that far off, old school, retro, dictatorial monarchy and its forces to rule over us, far away, creative, radical, rebel folks, except for our own apathy and our own fear. I think he said timidity and tiredness or something. And I think he had no idea what was to come. And in that same sense, we have no idea what's to come. So when I was thinking, what if this isn't the worst of times? I was thinking of that. Like, what if this is our pre-history time, where there's a history just over there that we have no idea of, but that we are making now. And I think he's right, that the only thing that can defeat us is our own exhaustion and timidity. So we need each other to lift up one another's spirits, feed us good food and drink, and keep us brave and curious. I end every show by saying, stay kind, stay curious. And I think those are the qualities we need in this time to take us to the next chapter of this extraordinary experiment.
Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. Yeah. You know, when we were preparing, we said the easy or hard part is it's only about a half hour. So the hard part is it's only about a half hour. I want everybody to remember that we be the change wherever we are as a way to practice that. And I know we have questions. So Terry Smith from Washington Ethical, you're first. Do you have a question for us?
I do. Am very interested in Laura's special kind of journalism, and I'm wondering, where do you turn for journalism? What kind of journalism do you read or rely upon for the truth?
Oh, very good question. Well, I mean, I think increasingly I'm following the Substacks and the blogs, we all used to call them blogs, of people that I know, people that I think are kind of hub people. So, for example, when we wanted to do the story about the year after Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, I went back to the work of somebody in an organization that I trust, Blueprint North Carolina, and my old friend Mab Segrist, to find out what they'd been writing about this situation. And sure enough, they'd produced a report on the hurricane that hit the mountains and what a difference it had made to have a hurricane hit not the coast, not the shore, where the North Carolinians are used to storm damage, but the mountains. And so I called up Mab and I said, well, we'd love to do a story on this and what you found. And sure enough, there was a story to be told. So, you know, that's one thing, is that having been in this business long enough, you have a sense of who some of the linchpin people are, and the organizations are that you can rely on for different stories. And then, you know, I mean, I really do. I still read the New York Times and the Washington Post when I can, and the Guardian. I look at a lot of websites, but I also talk to a lot of people. I have to say the old school habit of talking to people is dying out in journalism, and it's not good enough to just text folks. Pick up a phone. If you want to know what's happening in a place, call someone who lives there. They may not know everything, but they'll point you in the right direction. And so it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I hope that it encourages people to be their own personal kind of journalist. Who are your sources that you rely on? Yeah. And when was the last time you actually talked to any of them?
Yeah. A drill down for a moment there to connect some dots, what we were speaking about asset-based community development. In Asheville, it's told that that it took weeks for the National Guard to come in and for all this, but the people, because they were previously organized, were up and running and taking care of each other right away. And that is one of those kernels of importance.
And I will say, where we began about supporting the media that supports you, when we were in Nashville, we were able to do our show, to do a set of interviews in the radio station that is in the heart of Asheville, that was up and running and making it possible for people to get local news, because that's part of the community radio network that we're a part of, that Pacifica's a part of. So again, I would also say I listen and watch. I listen more than I watch, but I listen to Democracy Now! I listen to the work of, Rick Wolf and others. There's a lot of media that I support and listen to and get informed by. But again, yeah, when people can connect with each other, that is exactly what happened in Asheville. And if you haven't watched our episode about the recovery work in Asheville and who was there first on the ground, which is the people who were already on the ground, check it out. It's both amazing what they managed and inspiring. And there's some extraordinary models there that deserve so much more attention than we were even able to give them.
And examples how we live into the catastrophes that are only endless and going to come. How do we live into that?
And build structures that last. Yeah. Naomi Klein talks about disaster capitalism, but what about disaster socialism? Like what emerges in those disasters that can build in a new and different way to put us in better shape for the future?
I love that. Let me ask Elaine Durback from Maplewood, New Jersey, if you'd like to share a question or a comment.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I'm the president of the Essex Ethical Society. I'm also a co-host of a program on WBAI, the Naturalistic Support. Grateful to have them there. I think Arnell Dore, who is the presenters on with us today as well. I'm a former journalist, and I wanted to ask you. You do a lot of tough questioning, and you go into places where people don't want to be questioned. We've seen journalists shut down, blocked, excluded because they're asking tough questions. Should we be pussyfooting, asking things gently and diplomatically, or should we be, putting those questions out there, even if it means that we get excluded, the next time?
I don't think there's any such thing as a former journalist, and I don't think you are one by the sound of it. It's totally up to you. I mean, I think that there are institutions that one feels a responsibility for. So if you're at the helm of an organization, of an institution that's important in your community, then I think, yes, you do think twice about how to answer your question, how to ask your question. Personally, I think there's always a way to ask a tough question that is polite and maybe with a smile on your face. I learned a lot from the incredible poet and an essayist, June Jordan, who was one of the more radical people I've ever met, but she did it with such a smile and a giggle often that you didn't know. And I think that that's the technique that we have to look at today. Like a lot of the guys out there pumped up on testosterone, journalists, and wanting to get themselves in the news will throw a question just to throw a question. They know it's not really going to get an answer, but it might get them a headline or it might get them a lot of likes. If our goal is really to get information out there, if we can craft a great question that raises the point we're trying to raise, even if we don't get the answer, then I think we're doing our job. And our job changes depending on what our position is. If you're an independent journalist who's out there on your own, you have a certain amount more freedom than you do if you're trying to hold down a radio station or maintain the license of a public television station. We are in a relationship with public television. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes they say, we want you to edit something. Now, up to now, it's never been content other than visuals. And I'm very happy about that. It frustrates me that they sometimes need us to, they don't like cleavage. They don't like signs that look like a vagina. They don't like expletives, even when we've silenced the person in a demonstration, say, who says an expletive. They don't even like it when you can see their lips move and you know they might be saying a four-letter word. So this kind of stuff is super annoying. But am I going to go to the mat over that? No, because I think it's more important that we get the show out about alternatives to capitalism and fighting white supremacy and patriarchy next week and the week after that. So that's my answer. But it sounds to me like you'd be very good at asking a piercing question without getting yourself canceled.
Right.
I mean, I have to say, there's a lot of commercial media that are very concerned about their access, right? Maybe a little bit less now than there was under the Democratic administrations, where we don't want to, lose our access to the people in power. At this point, the Trump administration's thrown most of the real journalists out of the room, so you don't have any access anyway. But I used to think often about this question of access. How important is your access? And then I would think of who actually covered the civil rights movement in this country, who actually brought us the news of what was happening in Jackson and around the country. Oxford, it was black media that had absolutely no access whatsoever to power and were reporting on the white power that were out to kill them, and they brought us that news. They had the access they needed, which was the access to events and to each other and to the truth. But were they trying to maintain their good relationship with the governor or the mayor?
Another example of asset-based presence. There we go. I think Fred Bright from Chapel Hill.
Close, Raleigh, North Carolina, but we're just about
my
a
bad.
little ways down the road.
Okay.
I'm really impressed with your success, Laura, about getting the word out, and that's something that we consider in EHST, Ethical Humanist Society of the Triangle. It's something that frustrates us because we feel that we have a message that people are needing or wanting to hear, and what they hear is only how to focus on their own success. So my question to you is, can you give us any advice from your experience as to how to better do that if you're, a relatively small ethical society, say in North Carolina?
I mean, I think that's the tough question in this moment. And how do you even measure getting the word out? We have more metrics now than we know what to do with. Likes, subscriptions, follows, all of the social media metrics kind of haunt us. But I think if you see your organization growing, even a little, every year, every week, every month, if you bring in 1 or 2 new people, then you're really building for the future in a concrete way. Sure, you could make a big, splashy something. Maybe you do something big and beautiful once a year and put all your efforts into getting some attention. I saw the beautiful revival chorus singing outside of Home Depot on Thanksgiving. And, they clearly had made their effort. This gorgeous chorus dressed in white, singing outside Home Depot, "We don't want no deportations." They found a good moment, Thanksgiving. They had a perfect message. They had a very visually appealing and orally appealing action. And they probably got attention for that. But we might not hear about them for weeks or even months from now. So I think it's, given your resources, you're not a media organization. You're making meaning here. You're making relationships here. But if the thought ever occurred to you, let's produce a podcast every week, I would say think again. Maybe that is, or maybe that isn't the best use of your resources. Pick 1 or 2 activities, well-timed, well-crafted, creative. Reach out to the media that you can reach and consider it a success if you get some of new people in your group. But if your goal is to get covered by the, biggest paper or newspaper or TV channel in town, you could perhaps achieve that, but you might not grow your organization in the way you want. Great questions for everyone.
Okay. We're out of time for that. Bill. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you guys so much for this wonderful exchange, and thank you everyone who came in. We're just so pleased to be connected to all of these societies across the country. We hope if any of you visit New York City, you please come and check us out. We'd love to see you. You'll be glad you did. And now I want to give a chance for Scott Wright from St. Louis to give us some final words.
Thank you, Brooklyn Ethical Society, for hosting an excellent All Societies platform. These events are a special time for our societies to come together and realize that we are not independent islands of reason and kindness in an ocean of darkness, but rather we are a shining archipelago of lights, radiating hope and warmth towards each other and into the world. We're so grateful to have met and heard from Laura Flanders. If you feel inspired, if you learned something today, or if you're already excited for our next All Society platform, I strongly encourage you right now to make a donation to the American Ethical Union. Access to our programming for all people without a paywall is an ethical commitment we take seriously, and it is only through your support, donations, or otherwise that we're able to create and maintain national ethical culture programming for all people. In these times when millions of our friends and neighbors across this country are stepping forward to demand a world that is democratic, compassionate, just, and sustainable, we need local societies to support ethical humanist culture. Please give as generously as you can so that we can bring more voices like Laura's to our union. You'll find the link to donate at aeu.org, and you'll find more information about our individual societies on our website as well. Many thanks to all of you who attended and participated, to Brooklyn Ethical, to Vondra Thorburn, Dror, Stan Horowitz, and the AEU's Committee Platform Series. This event series is so important for us to get a feeling of being together across the whole country. Thank you all. As we say goodbye, let us hear You Matter with Maya Azucena, created at a Civic Saturday co-produced by Y Vote founder Sandra Balaban and the New York Society for Ethical Culture. I'll leave you all with this. Please remember to elicit the best in each other, and to celebrate your unique unlikeness. Happy holidays, everyone.
Does anyone want to join?
Put your back into it. We matter. You matter. Oh, yeah, I matter. We matter. You matter. Oh, yeah, I matter. We need a song that we can sing when troubled waters come rising. I'm like the ocean in every single way, like the ocean in every single day. I come upon the shore and wash away the lies. Come upon the shore and wash away your lies. We matter. You matter. Oh, yeah, I matter. We matter. You matter. Oh, yeah, I matter. And when they see me shine, my ancestors smile. My ancestors smile when they see me rise. And my voice will be heard until the end of time. Yes, my voice will be heard until the heavens high. Here we go. We matter. You matter. Oh, yeah, I matter. We matter. You matter. Oh, yeah, I matter. We ain't gone nowhere. We ain't going nowhere. Yeah, 'cause we're here to stay. 'Cause we're here to stay. We ain't gone nowhere. We ain't going nowhere. Hey, 'cause we're here to stay. 'Cause we're here to stay. You're beautiful, just as you are. You don't need to change. You matter. You matter. We matter. You matter. We matter. Hey. We matter. You matter. I matter. Hey, hey. We matter. You matter. Oh, yeah, I matter. We matter. You matter. Oh, yeah, I matter. Oh, yeah, I matter. Beautiful job.
So, do this for what, about 20 minutes? Is that, okay. Well, then we have some wine and cheese. Audrey, you were on the list for questions. Would you like to ask a question to start?
So I lead programs for children and youth, and my question for you is, can you tell us about a formative ethical development moment of your childhood?
Oh, well, sure. I mean, I think the fundamental formative development experience was growing up in my family. My father, as I mentioned, used a wheelchair. He was a groundbreaker, no question, getting himself onto the stage, being a successful performer. was his extraordinary contribution long before there was the ADA or anything like that. He was touring the world. He used to say all the English-speaking world and in America. Got it? Okay. But my mother, he died when I was 13. My mother took on his mantle in lots of ways. So he didn't really fancy being sort of a charity head or a model or icon for charities. But he was, he agreed to serve on several charities having to do with disability and access. And my mother took that on much more enthusiastically after he died. And she actually started an organization called TripScope that built on her experience as the person who really, as my father would say, of himself, he would say, I produce the show, but she produces me. And sure enough, she was the person that actually made it possible for us to tour around the world. I was a baby. He was in his chair. He toured with his partner, who was an incredible composer and pianist who had his own family. But so Mom created an organization and gave travel advice for people with disabilities as to how to get from place to place. And I say all of this because I believe it was my mother, in fact, who gave me that sense early on that everybody matters, that you can be in community with anyone. We would go into disabled people's centers where people had fairly serious disabilities. Now, she was American. I grew up, my mother was American, my father was British. An American in England is out of place because Americans tend to be much more affectionate than British people are. So it was already startling to people that she would hug them on first meeting, but she would hug people who were seriously disabled, who had serious visible disabilities, who nobody had hugged in a very long time. And I learned that from her. I learned that sort of everybody matters from her. And then the other thing that she did was host parties. She was a big hoster. And I think, people think I got my work, I inherited my skills from my father, who was a performer, my grandfather and relatives on the other side who were journalists. But really, I think it was my mother, because I believe what I'm doing is inviting people to a conversation and trying to lay a table that is nourishing and make sure that everybody is part of the conversation. And that's what she did. I watched her do that in her life for her whole life. So there you have it.
Lovely.
Yay.
Another
Shout out to
question in
Claudia
the room.
Flanders.
To Claudia Flanders. Alan.
Thank you, Laura, for everything. Thank you, Laura, for everything you've done. First of all, I don't know that I need a mic.
No, for everybody. You can
All right. I'd like to announce that I'm representing the first socialist teachers organization since 1960 in the public school system. And our first activity is December 10th, a teach-in on socialism 2025 with Professor Richard Wolff at Judson Memorial Church. Awesome. Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's been a struggle. It's been 65 years, but I think Laura sort of suggested we sort of have a wind at our back with a big hurricane in our facing us.
Yeah.
The other thing is I was a projects coordinator for the DOE for a long time. Our best program ever was the third grade You and Your Neighborhood program, where third grade kids were put out into the streets with their teachers to find out who the shopkeepers were, what was in the neighborhoods. And I'm reminding you of it because we have an entire high school generation that has no purpose at all. Student government has not been given purpose, and maybe those are the troops to root out in every one of the neighborhoods where the assets are. But the bigger question is we have a whole generation that's being miseducated totally, and I think a lot of the stuff now has to be focused toward youth.
Yeah.
Laura, I have a serious journalist question for you. I did the Columbia Journalism program for graduate journalism, and it was stressed the concept of a go. People of my generation are having trouble letting go of some of the history that was really formative in our lives. But literally the conditions on the earth and the conditions of all our lives have changed. you collect data and then you have to synthesize it in information. How do you differentiate between what's important but a go and no longer relevant to the future considerations of planning and activism and what needs to be told?
I don't know, I always get it right. You know, I'm a pretty nostalgic person myself. So I don't know if I always get it right. There are some stories that I want to tell because I think they are important, and I'm not sure if anybody else does, actually. So I don't think I can give you a really hard and fast line. I think that when we say it's forward-looking people. Like, we try to be forward-looking people. So if a story doesn't have the capacity or project or model or something we're reporting on, doesn't have the capacity to be relevant to somebody on the other side of the country or somebody in a different generation, and is just like a cute story, we tend to reject it. We only have so much airtime. So I'm saying I don't always get it right, but I do try to think, okay, well, I like that story, but is it relevant really for this moment? I often try it out on people that I don't think are as nostalgic or have the same history as I do, and just see is something that seems interesting or gets them excited. You know, I want to say, here's an example. So one of the shows we're going to rebroadcast over the winter holiday is a show about a 50-year-old project that was a failure in the 1970s by auto workers in the aerospace industry in the UK. And it was a big deal in my childhood. I remember this Lucas plan that the workers at an aerospace factory, when they were looking at cuts in military, came up with their whole, an entirely well thought out and engineered and drawn out alternative plan for their factories. Because there was a man in government who said, when they came to him to say, please don't close our factory, he said, well, you come up with a better idea. And they did. And their idea was about renewables and wind turbines and electric cars, and they were the people that knew how to make them, and they even had prototypes. They made a bus, and they did all this stuff. But it's 50 years ago. The situation has changed a lot. And most of the people involved are in their 90s. And so I reached out to my resident UK correspondent, namely my nephew, who was in a year between high school and college, and I asked him, Stanley, if he'd help me on this story. And to begin, I just wanted to see if he was interested in it, if it got his attention. Now, he's a upper-class white kid, boy, he's not everybody. He has an interest in this stuff, maybe. Maybe it's not an entirely objective person. But he was fascinated. He did a ton of research. It was ultimately, I asked him to pre-interview these 90-year-olds that were going to be a day's drive away for us to go and interview. I asked him, are you going to tell me these people are going to be good on television? 90-year-old aerospace worker with a Yorkshire accent? And he said yes. And sure enough, he was right. I believe it's a beautiful episode. It gives you a sense of possibility. These people are very persuasive. So that was my kind of test. I don't know if I got it right. You'll see. It broadcast in a couple of weeks. Lucas Aerospace, 50th anniversary.
I love it.
It was. I think it's a very touching story, and it was almost entirely produced by Stanley Arledge.
I love that.
Shout
I
out
think
to
we
him.
all have to make sure we subscribe to Laura Flanders and Friends, maybe with a donation, and then you can make sure it's in your feed.
That's right.
As feeds go.
Never miss an episode, as we say.
Never miss an episode. I see a question back there. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Hi, Emily. And then after Emily, I saw someone in front of you also with a raised hand. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks so much. This has been amazing. I just would like to hear more. The title was "What If These Aren't the Worst of Times?" And I just like sort of an open question. The gathering storms of the strong men all over. Just anything you want to say about that. A little bit of hope. What fuels your hope? What are you seeing?
Well, I think these are crux times, right? These are times when things have really come to a head. Things people have been anticipating for years. And I'm not an Armageddonist. I don't think we should bring on Armageddon because out of that ruins will sprout something wonderful. But I have been in this business long enough that I feel that it's our responsibility to look at the positive of the possibility of the moment. And I see it. I see subjects that we couldn't ever talk about, that we really had a hard time moving in the media. Zionism is a word. Anti-Zionism is a word. We're now seeing, told, spoken out loud. You've got a global movement against occupation and for Palestinian liberation that was nowhere 10 years ago, that has been the product of decades of work. Now, should it have required a genocide to get us to this place? No. But I think that we've seen something grow that has expressed itself in this moment, calling for justice, an end to anti-Semitism, an end to anti-Islamophobia, and to Islamophobia, and justice for Palestinians. That's one example. I also think, after the 2008 financial crash, I, with many people, looked at Occupy Wall Street and we thought, okay, people are talking about capitalism. We're going to be reinventing our economy. Capitalism, was a disaster. People are naming it. We're talking about the 99% versus the 1%. And then we reverted back to bailing out the banks and bailing out the hedge funders, and we are in a similar situation today, feeling as if it's on the edge of another bubble about to explode. I think at that moment, you had the election of Barack Obama. A lot of people thought all our problems were solved, racism was over, we were going to have, milk and honey for everyone. We went to sleep. A lot of people stopped working. He demobilized his own community organization, Democracy for America. This time, I think we get it. Rule by strong men has appealed to a lot of people who felt that they were weak, felt that they'd been neglected, who felt that nobody was listening, who felt that the system was rigged against them. Liberals, liberal Democrats, centrists, didn't speak to that sense of sadness and rejection, and not just a sense, but the reality of life for most people. But I think we have a population of people who are getting very clear and honest about what we're up against and what we're experiencing. And we saw it in the Mamdani campaign. I mean, there are some heroes. We don't let our heroes be solo heroes. We don't ask them to lead us to the mountaintop. But we see some people doing things differently. Mamdani went and spoke to those Trump voters and said, what was Trump offering that Kamala Harris wasn't offering? And then he decided to offer that. What Trump, in the view of those voters, was speaking to was their sense that they couldn't get ahead, their sense that no one was listening, everything was too expensive, facilities were just, crumbling and in bad condition, buses were too expensive and too slow, there's no childcare, So I think something's changing, and I think when I think of this moment, I think of, in fact, the very politician, the very member of parliament who encouraged the Lucas workers to go and make their own plan was a man called Tony Benn, who was a socialist, elected as a Labour Party leader in the 70s and tried to be leader in the 80s and then rejected from the party. But Tony would say hope is our fuel and fear is our destruction. Like, fear is the tool that's used to keep us down, fear and despair. And hope and positivity and some lights, some models, some examples. I think, hey, optimism of the will.
When I was deciding what to wear today for a pin, and I didn't choose it, another one was embracing hope. I want to say that kindness really matters. Years ago, when we gave a dinner, the children, we all were asked to put, instead of this is Brooklyn Ethical, we were asked to put in our name tag a value, not our name because we all knew each other. And my 12-year-old son wrote kindness. And that always struck me, that he learned that how important that is as a fundamental principle. And if you add that to a political ideology that says we are the 99% and we have the right to own and control the things that are ours here on this planet, combined with kindness, we may be thinking outside the box. Through these worst of times, bring kindness and bring the right to own and control the stuff we have. Working at a public university sort of reminds us, like, we have public use of space.
Yeah, and I think the box is the box that we are constantly given by our corporate media, that we only have limited options, we always have to pick the least worst, that our economy was always this way, is always going to be this way, it's like the weather. Everything's bad and going to get worse. The only thing you can do is create your own personal, private lifeboat and don't let anybody else on it. That our future is the future of some kind of weird settlements where we will arm ourselves to the teeth and put up a big fence and not let anybody in. We're constant, that's the box. And I think outside the box is, whoa, maybe there's some buried treasure around here.
Tom.
Okay, thank you. A pleasure. So I'm a treasurer here at BSEC, and I also say I'm a new listener. I like what I've heard. I've got some catching up to do. So a question for you as to which institution you think is the moral compass for this country. At one point, you could talk about the clergy being the moral compass for society. And I'm wondering on questions with regard to tax fairness and democracy and climate, universal health care, whether there's an opportunity for ethical societies like ours to go ahead and serve as that kind of moral compass in terms of providing a consistent perspective on these important issues that endures year after year, decade after decade, and who you think the moral compass for this country is right now.
I mean, this is a real cop-out answer, but I think it's we the people. I don't think there's a single institution. I don't think there's a single leader. I think it really is us, the moral compass. I mean, my moral compass is be kind, be curious about each other and be caring. I wish I could say just leave all of your money and subscribe every week to this one organization that is our moral compass. But I don't feel that there is one. But I think there is a collective sense of, I feel it when I'm in the street for the No Kings rallies. I feel it when I'm in the streets here where there's thousands of people. I feel it when I'm in the streets. I split my time between here and a very rural county in upstate New York, Sullivan County. They could turn out hundreds of people in a little town of just a few thousand. I feel it there too. I felt it during COVID when you heard the pots being banged. Thanking the emergency workers, the essential workers. I mean, you get a feeling of it once in a while, and sometimes you feel it in a place. But I don't think there's one organization to ascribe to that will save us, sadly.
Years ago, we were told here at Ethical that we shouldn't use the word God, that, that's a whole nother avenue of belief. But then someone said, God is love, and I'm like, love. We can all agree to that, which is kind of that kindness philosophy of sort of saying whatever, a rose is a rose by any other name, but a holy presence to say we love and care, and we are kind and curious is a way to show up for
It doesn't believe that you don't, it doesn't mean that you don't fight the good fight and stand up against some people. You don't have to be kind and quiet. Just to be kind.
I've been asked to close down our Q&A. I think, Bill, do you get the last word to close us out? I get the last word to close us out? Oh, my God. Laura, what a pleasure. And,
the pleasure was mine.
And I know we have some wine and cheese. It's really nice to see so many people in the house. I just want to say hi to so many people. So here we are, and we can do that. Okay, thanks.